This is Bill. Hopefully there's not too much sound in the background, but sometimes I do one of these videos and I go and put it down and I have problems. I wanted to talk about snowbird destinations. A lot of, many RVers go to certain places in the winter. Some of them go to the same place from the first, some of them, especially full-timers, go to the same place the first year and they go back over and over and over again. Exactly the same spot. A spot that they learn for whatever reasons. It could be that they had family who'd gone there, they had friends who went there, they heard from someone else it was a wonderful place. They don't get around. They go to southern Florida to a particular place, they go to the Rio Grande Valley of Texas, to southern Texas, they go to Palm Springs, they go to Yuma, Arizona, or Palm Springs, Arizona, or not Palm Springs, Mesa, Arizona, or they go to San Diego area. They go somewhere, and that's where they go. They go to a particular campground, and they spend 3 to maybe 6 months there every year, and they tell you how wonderful these campgrounds are, how friendly the people are, how no one else has activities like them except that other places do. Snowbird destinations have campgrounds that are small, they have campgrounds that are medium-sized, they have campgrounds that are huge, and most of the ones that are medium have activities, they are known for it, that's what people do. They often have, many of them can have craft rooms and rock rooms and woodworking shops and photography groups that go out and take photos and etc. etc. It's not uncommon to have all of that going on. In fact, the one we go to in Mesa, Arizona, my wife chooses to go there because it's got a great quilting group that she gets along with well. But we have not gone every year. We went 2 years in a row, then a year away, and now we're going back. And that's the way it is. When we went full-timing in 2003, we had gone to a class at what's called Life on Wheels, and the guy who started Life on Wheels, Gaylord Maxwell, said, don't go to the same place. Travel. Go out. He recommended 2 to 3 weeks per destination. Just go. So the first year we were in Florida, so we had ourselves stuck in Jacksonville getting a repair. Then we went down to Bradenton, which is the Bradenton, Sarasota area, which is just south of Tampa. Spent a couple weeks. Then we went down the center of the state and saw what it was like to stay around Lake Okeechobee in a place called Clewiston. Not a choice we wanted. And we went and spent time in the Keys for Christmas. Came back and spent time in south of Miami for New Year's, then to Fort Myers area for a couple weeks. There was actually more than that. And other times we went, and we then worked our way out of the state. Over time in Florida, we've spent a reasonable amount of time, enough to know what we're doing in Ocala, Orlando area, and as I said, Clewiston in the center of the state. We've gone on the East Coast. We've stayed in Jacksonville. We've known St. Augustine from there. We've stayed in the Daytona Beach area, and then further south we've also stayed in the Vero Beach area, and we've explored the Space Coast, which is between Daytona and Vero Beach, kind of on day trips and things, so we knew what was there. We've also stayed in Fort Lauderdale, Pompano Beach, Miami, Florida Keys for periods of time, Homestead, right? So we've done the whole coast. Then on the East Coast, coming down from the north, we've explored a little bit of Cedar Key and Crystal River areas. We've also stayed a little bit in Dunedin, which is the north end of Tampa. As I said, stayed in Bradenton, and then we've stayed multiple times in the Fort Myers area. So we really like our Fort Myers area. We quickly determined and have repeatedly learned is our favorite place to be in Florida. cars going by. It's in a campground, we're outside, people are going to be outside talking and cars are going to go by. Anyway, that's Florida. We've also spent time in the panhandle of Florida, Panama City, Fort Walton Beach, been around Pensacola, which is right Fort Walton Beach. We spent time in southern Alabama, which is a small area. Mostly staying in Summerdale, but that way we could go to Fort Lee, we could go to Pensacola, which is only an hour, we could go to Mobile. We've driven around the Gulf Coast of Mississippi, which is not, past Crichton, Bay St. Louis, all that, Biloxi. We've also spent a little bit of time in Louisiana, but not much. But the weather is similar. In Texas, we've spent time in Livingston, which is east of Houston. We've in the southern Houston area. We've spent some time around Galveston. But the two mains, and we spent some time in the San Antonio area and in the Hill Country, which is just to the north and maybe a little bit to surrounds to the north, both east and west of San Antonio. We've also spent the time. The two main snowbird areas in Texas are actually around Corpus Christi to Rockport, which we have spent time in, and down in what they call the Rio Grande Valley, which is where Brownsville, Harlingen, McAllen, Mission, that whole area, which you can get around fairly well. And a lot of people love it. That's their main place, and we didn't. But that's okay. Other people can like it. We've also actually spent a little bit of time in Big Bend National Park area, but that's not really a snowbird destination because it's so isolated from everything else. In New Mexico, there really isn't that much good snowboard area. I mean, you can be in the general Carlsbad area, and most of the time you aren't below freezing, but it doesn't get very warm in the winter. You cross the mountains going west into the Las Cruces. You're at lower elevation, but you still can get really cold at night. And only 60s and maybe 50s in the daytime a lot. Deming's the same way. Some friends stayed one winter in Deming and went down to -5 Fahrenheit. It was not exactly the best place. So most everything else in New Mexico is at higher elevation and further north, so it's going to be colder. So it's not really a good snowbird destination. Arizona, there's a lot of snowbird destinations in Arizona, starting on the Colorado, border, which is Colorado River. The south end is Yuma, which a lot of people go to. We don't find it. We know it's a place to mostly have a social life. A lot of people who are snowbirding there, and they get together and they play cards and games and they pizza parties and other excuses to do things. They go. One group we're in has a weekly movie and go out to dinner afterwards thing. It's a social world. You go further north of Yuma, you get to Quartzsite, which is mostly boondocking, but there's a bunch of campgrounds in that area. That general area, there's full hookup campgrounds. There isn't a lot of stores and such, but it's cheap, and people live the whole winter there on a lot of money, and they make a lot of their own entertainment. A little further north is Lake Havasu, which has got water, ice shoes, and things like that. It's all right. And then further north you get to Bullhead City, Arizona, Laughlin, Fort Mojave, Laughlin, Nevada, that area, and you gamble, you've got some other things to do in that area. Inland, you just go a little further and you've Gila Bend is not much to it, but you've got the general Phoenix area, which is very large. I mean, in the far western side of Phoenix, some people stay at some campgrounds. In the northwestern corner is Surprise, of which there's some very nice campgrounds there and things. People stay all winter long, like Happy Trails. And not terribly far from all that is the Escapees Park in Congress, which is a little cooler than the rest. Now, the other part of Phoenix where everybody stays the most is over in Mesa and Apache Junction. And we really like Mesa. We've stayed in Apache Junction and Mesa. We've actually stayed in multiple of these places for at least periods of a week. But Mesa's got a lot. It's the third largest city in the state. It's got a lot to offer. It's got a lot going on. It's very for us it works. For a lot of people say it's too busy for them, it's too expensive for them, it's too whatever for them. That's okay. It's at least there's some green. There's a lot of orange orchards and some greenness there, while in Yuma there's not much green. Apache Junction is a little further out. A lot of people don't see much difference. It's a little cheaper to be in Apache Junction. If you don't go anywhere all the time, it's probably just as fine. But we found we were always on the go, and we were happier being in Mesa because we were constantly driving into Mesa. There's also some other places to camp south of Mesa and Apache Junction. They're a little further out and a little cheaper. The next spot major is probably the Tucson area, where there's a lot of campgrounds. Tucson's a little higher in elevation. It's also about 100 miles south, but it's about 5 degrees cooler. A lot going on in Tucson. You can get in, though driving around Tucson can be very frustrating because a lot of the city is an old, there's no real fast ways around. Between the Phoenix area and Tucson, and closer to Phoenix, is Casa Grande, which is a town with a few campgrounds that a lot of people seem to like. We haven't found it that exciting, but we have friends who love it. Once you get away from Tucson, some people go and stay in Benson, which is about a 45-minute drive east of Tucson, a little higher elevation. It's got at least a few things to offer. It doesn't do it for us, but we know friends who think it's the best place in the whole world. Another place some people go who don't mind it being a little cooler is they go to the Camp Verde Sedona area, which is higher in elevation again, and that's north of Tucson. And it gets cooler and it's not as warm. That's kind of Arizona. I mean, there's a lot of little spots in Arizona, but that's kind of where everybody hangs out. California is more diverse. Sorry. I'll see if I edit that out. Something felt like was walking on my neck. You kind of have snowbird things starting from the Pacific Ocean. You can go fairly far north. A lot of people actually hang out, even in the South San Francisco Bay Area, but mostly they're down closer to San Luis Obispo, Pismo Beach. There's where a lot of people hang out for the winter. Then you come further south and it becomes about impossible for camping till you get through the whole entire Los Angeles area. Then you come down and there's some camping around San Diego. Inland in the San Francisco Bay Area, there's definitely more camping. I'm in Los Angeles and San Diego. There's definitely camping in the areas around Temecula and those kind of places. There's more places that people hang out, but the majority of people who want to hang in Hemet and that's where people do a lot of golfing, and they go a little further east, but you actually go lower in elevation and you get to the Cachilla Valley, which is Palm Springs, Desert Hot Springs, Indio, La Junta, Rancho Mirage. I mean, there's a whole bunch of Palm Desert. That whole area has a lot of campgrounds that people stay at and love. We've spent a lot of time there, and it's not, maybe it should be a second choice to Mesa, but it doesn't seem to do as much for us. But we have friends who think it's the greatest place in the world. Another more obscure spots that people stay is in the Borrego Springs area, which is kind of south, and it's south of Palm Springs, across a mountain range and down low elevation, and it's another one of those more out in the desert type places to go and hang out. And a lot of people boondock there, camp without hookups. A small contingency also hang around El Centro, Imperial, California. There's some campgrounds there. It's also warm. At least it has more features than Yuma, but it's in California and doesn't have as much infrastructure as Yuma, and it's only an hour drive. The other spot where people sometimes stay is in Slab City, which is north of El Centro, which is a giant military base that people just live off the grid on, and there's people who live off the grid there all year long. And of course in California you can go further north. I mean, people do stay in much of California from San Francisco south. They stay in Sacramento, they stay in all these places like that, but it's not really snowbird destinations. Most of those people they're staying or working or something, and that's just they're staying, but they have all year campgrounds. You know, there's definitely people who, you know, people can winter in any place where the weather is reasonable for staying in an RV. They don't insulate as well. I mean, people stay in Washington State, in the western Washington State, and in western Oregon. You know, they stay by Seattle, they stay on the coasts where the weather's even more coastal. Friends of ours have stayed a couple winters in Port Orford, Oregon, which is on the coast, southern coast. It's not where I would want, but it works for them. But you find that if the weather gets down below about, you want to stay somewhere where it doesn't go to below about 30 that often, and rarely below 20. You just, you know, and there's places that do that. You know, they might not get up more than 40 degrees and 45 degrees in the daytime, but they don't freeze as much. Anyway, snowbirds. We have mostly go between Florida and Mesa, Arizona is what we're doing now. We've spent time in many other places, but we've found that those work for us. That doesn't mean it works for you. The best thing for you to do is just don't try to lock yourself in. Go and play in different places from about November through March. I mean, November through March, you can often get a week or two reservation, even in the worst places. Even February is the hardest, but you can normally figure out how to stay somewhere in February. And the rest of the time, you can normally get yourself some spot. It's not going to be a perfect spot. You're not going to completely understand how the activities. You're not going to fit in with the social life there as much, but you're going to have a lot better feel of what's in that area, the kind of campgrounds that are available, and you'll probably have a lot better choice of. You know, you'll find something you like, not what somebody else thinks you like or somebody else likes and decided it's perfect for you. Full timing is a choice for the people doing it. You've got choices. Use them. Go find what works for you and be realistic about it. I mean, if you can't go all the way across the country, then ignore. If you're on the West Coast, don't go all the way to Florida, because it'll cost. Maybe you do it just as a trip, so you can say you've been there. But if you don't feel that you can afford to do it every year, then don't do it. And if you're from the East Coast, you might very well not go to Arizona or Southern California. That's fine for the same reasons, but don't just go where everybody else goes unless that's what you want to do. Make that choice your own. Thanks. I hope this doesn't bore you to tears. It certainly took a lot longer than I expected.